Our millionaire gets into his car and is shocked when a beggar girl shouts, "Don't drive, your daughter cut the brakes." How did she know that? What could have been the daughter's motives besides the inheritance? Leave your opinion and let's uncover this shocking story. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Sarah Mackenzie's heels clicked against the marble floors of Evergreen Tower as she made her way to her father's office. At 48 floors up, James Mackenzie's corner office overlooked the sprawling city below, a testament to decades of ruthless business acumen and relentless ambition. "He's waiting for you, Miss Mackenzie," his secretary Marion said with a tight smile. Sarah barely acknowledged her as she pushed through the heavy oak doors. James stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silver hair reflecting the late afternoon sun. He didn't turn around when she entered. "The papers are ready for your signature." Sarah's fingers curled into fists at her sides. "I won't marry him." "This merger is crucial for the company," James continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Andrew Coleman is a rising star in the industry. The marriage will secure both our families' futures." "I'm 32 years old, Dad. This isn't the 1800s. You can't just arrange my marriage like I'm some kind of business asset." James finally turned, his steel-gray eyes meeting hers. "Everything is a business asset, Sarah. I thought I taught you that." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "Sit down." Sarah remained standing. "I have my own life, my own career. I won't give that up to be some trophy wife." "Your career as an art gallery curator?" James scoffed. "Playing with paintings while the real world moves on? The Coleman merger will bring billions in new contracts. Your marriage to Andrew ensures our family maintains controlling interest. So that's all I am to you? A bargaining chip? You're my daughter. I'm securing your future." He picked up a thick folder from his desk. "The prenuptial agreement is fair. You'll receive a generous monthly allowance." "I don't want your money," Sarah's voice cracked. "I want you to see me as a person, not a pawn in your corporate games." "Don't be dramatic. This is how our world works. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." Sarah stared at her father, really looked at him, the deep lines around his mouth, the coldness in his eyes, the rigid set of his shoulders. When had he become this stranger, who cared more about business deals than his own daughter's happiness? "Mum would never have wanted this for me," she whispered. James's face hardened. "Your mother isn't here, and she never understood what it takes to build something lasting in this world." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She stumbled back, memories of her mother's warm smile and gentle hands threatening to overwhelm her. Elizabeth Mackenzie had been everything James wasn't: kind, creative, full of life and love, until cancer stole her away when Sarah was just 16. "You're right," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Mom isn't here, but I am, and I won't let you turn me into another one of your acquisitions." She turned and walked out, ignoring her father calling her name. In the elevator, she pressed the button for the parking garage, her mind racing. She had to find a way out of this marriage, out from under her father's control. But how? The garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet at this hour. Sarah's footsteps echoed as she walked to her car, a sleek silver Mercedes, another one of her father's attempts to buy her compliance. As she approached, she noticed a figure crouched near the back of the vehicle. "Hey," she called out, "what are you doing?" The figure straightened quickly, a man in dark clothes who seemed vaguely familiar. Before Sarah could place him, he was running toward the exit, disappearing into the shadows. Heart pounding, she approached her car cautiously. Everything looked normal at first glance, but something made her pause, a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She knelt down to look underneath the vehicle, the way her mother's old boyfriend Tom had taught her about cars when she was young. What she saw made her blood run cold. The brake line had been cleanly cut. On the other side of the city, 8-year-old Emma huddled in the doorway of a closed convenience store, watching the rain turn the sidewalk into a river of reflected neon lights. Her threadbare jacket did little to keep out the chill, but it was better than nothing. "You," "Okay, little bug," Mrs. Chen called from inside the store where she was closing up. The elderly shopkeeper often let Emma shelter in her doorway on rainy nights, sometimes even sharing leftover pastries that hadn't sold during the day. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen," Emma replied, managing a smile. She didn't want the kind woman to worry. Mrs. Chen emerged a few minutes later, locking the door behind her. She pressed a paper bag into Emma's hands. "Some day-old bread and cookies. Be careful tonight, okay?" Emma clutched the bag to her chest, treasuring its warmth. "Thank you. I will." After Mrs. Chen left, Emma settled deeper into the doorway and pulled out one of the cookies. She broke it carefully in half. Saving some for later was a habit she'd learned the hard way during her 6 months on the streets. The rain eventually slowed to a drizzle, and Emma knew she should start looking for a better spot to sleep. The convenience store doorway wasn't safe after dark. She gathered her few possessions, a worn backpack containing a change of clothes, a tattered paperback book, and her most precious possession, a silver locket containing the only picture she had of her mother. The streets were quieter now, most people having hurried home to escape the rain. Emma walked quickly, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the groups of rowdy bargoers and the occasional police car. She'd learned which areas were safer, which places to avoid, which people might show kindness instead of cruelty. Her wandering took her to a more upscale part of town, where towering office buildings gave way to elegant homes set back from tree-lined streets. Emma rarely came to this neighborhood. The security guards and residents were quick to chase away anyone who looked like they didn't belong. But tonight, something drew her forward. A flash of movement caught her eye. A man in dark clothes, slipping between two parked cars. Emma instinctively pressed herself against a hedge, watching. The man's behavior seemed odd, furtive. He approached a silver Mercedes parked in a private garage entrance, glancing around before crouching down beside it. Emma's heart began to race. She'd seen enough car thieves in her time on the streets to recognize suspicious behavior, but this felt different. The man wasn't trying to break into the car. He was doing something underneath it. After a few minutes, he straightened and hurried away. Emma waited until he was gone before creeping closer to investigate. The garage entrance was well lit, and she could see dark drops on the concrete beneath the car, fluid of some kind leaking slowly. Her mother had been a mechanic before she got sick. Emma had spent countless hours in the garage with her, learning about engines and parts. "Always check your brake lines," her mum would say. "They're one of the most important safety features in a car." Emma's blood ran cold as she realized what the man had done. But before she could decide what to do, a woman approached the car. Tall, elegant, clearly belonging to this wealthy neighborhood. She was fishing car keys from her purse when Emma's voice burst out. "Wait! Don't drive it!" The woman startled, peering into the shadows where Emma stood. "Who's there?" Emma stepped forward, trembling but determined. "Someone was messing with your car. I think they cut the brake line." "What? That's ridiculous. How would you know that?" "Please," Emma begged. "Just look underneath. There's fluid leaking. My mum was a mechanic. I know what tampered brake lines look like." Something in Emma's voice must have convinced her. The woman knelt down, designer dress brushing the concrete, and looked where Emma was pointing. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed what Emma had seen. "Oh my God," the woman whispered. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I need to call the police." "No!" Emma backed away quickly. "Please, I can't be here when they come. Just be careful, okay?" She turned to run, but the woman called out, "Wait, what's your name? Let me thank you properly." But Emma was already disappearing into the shadows, her heart pounding. She found an alcove several blocks away and sank down, trying to calm her. Breathing. She hadn't meant to get involved, to draw attention to herself. Street kids who got noticed usually ended up in the system, shuttled between foster homes or juvenile facilities. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd witnessed something more sinister than a simple act of vandalism. The way the man had moved, his careful precision, this wasn't random. Someone had wanted that woman to have an accident. Emma pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling very small and very alone in the vast, dangerous city. She didn't know it yet, but her simple act of courage had set in motion events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone involved in ways she could never have imagined. Sarah sat in her office at the art gallery the next morning, staring unseeing at her computer screen. She hadn't slept at all, her mind racing with questions. Who had tampered with her car? And more importantly, why? The police had taken a report, but without security camera footage or witnesses, they didn't have much to go on. A soft knock on her door made her jump. "Come in," she called, trying to compose herself. Andrew Coleman stepped into the office, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit. "I heard about what happened last night. Are you all right?" Sarah's fingers clenched around her coffee cup. Of course, her father had already told her supposed fiancé about the incident. "I'm fine, just a bit shaken." Andrew moved closer, perching on the edge of her desk. "You should have called me. I would have come right away." "I can handle things myself," Sarah said, fighting to keep the irritation from her voice. She'd only fed Andrew a handful of times at business functions, yet here he was, acting like he had some claim on her. "Of course you can." His smile was condescending. "But soon you'll be my wife. Let me take care of you." Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. "Andrew, about the marriage. I've already started looking at penthouses downtown," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Obviously, you'll need to give up this little hobby of yours. A Coleman wife has certain social obligations to maintain." "This isn't a hobby," Sarah snapped. "I've built this gallery from nothing. We represent over 30 local artists, provide educational programs for underprivileged kids." "And that's very sweet," Andrew interrupted. "But it's time to think about your real future, our future." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Board meeting at 2 p.m. Your presence required." "I have to go," she said, standing abruptly. "Gallery business." Andrew caught her arm as she tried to pass. "Sarah, don't fight this. Your father and I both want what's best for you." She yanked her arm free. "No, you want what's best for yourselves." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, where were you last night around 6? "What?" Andrew's smooth facade cracked slightly. "I was at the club. Why?" "Just curious." Sarah walked out, her mind working furiously. The country club was less than 10 minutes from her father's office building. Plenty of time for someone to tamper with her car and still make an appearance at the club to establish an alibi. The boardroom was already full when Sarah arrived at Evergreen Tower. Her father sat at the head of the table, deep in conversation with Victor Hayes, his closest friend and advisor. Sarah had known Victor her entire life. He'd been her father's right-hand man for over 30 years. "Ah, Sarah," Victor smiled warmly as she took her seat. "How are you holding up after last night's excitement?" "You mean someone trying to kill me?" Sarah kept her voice level. "Just another day in the life of a Mackenzie, right, Dad?" James shot her a warning look. "We don't know that anyone was trying to kill you. It could have been random vandalism." "Really? In a secure parking garage with keycard access only?" "Sarah," Victor interjected smoothly, "your father's right. Let's not jump to conclusions. The police are investigating." Sarah studied Victor's familiar face, the silver hair, the kindly wrinkles around his eyes, the expensive watch on his wrist. Something tugged at her memory from last night, something about the figure she'd seen by her car. The meeting dragged on, discussing profit margins and market projections. Sarah barely listened, her mind piecing together fragments of memory. The way the man had moved last night. There had been something familiar about it. Suddenly, her phone lit up with a news alert. "Breaking evidence of financial irregularities at Mackenzie Corp Surfaces." Sarah's heart stopped as she read the headline. Across the table, she saw her father's face go pale as his own phone buzzed. The room erupted into chaos as other board members received the same alert. But Sarah wasn't watching them. She was watching Victor Hayes, who alone remained perfectly calm, methodically gathering his papers as the storm broke around them. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty who had tampered with her car. The question was, why? Emma woke to the sound of rain again, this time dripping through a crack in the abandoned storefront where she'd spent the night. Her clothes were damp, and her stomach growled painfully. The bread and cookies from Mrs. Chen were long gone. She thought about the woman from last night, her expensive clothes, her perfectly styled hair, her look of shock when Emma had warned her about the car. In Emma's experience, rich people usually ignored street kids at best, called the police at worst. But there had been something different about this woman, a kindness in her eyes that reminded Emma of her mother. Making her way back to Mrs. Chen's store, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she should do something more. But what could a homeless 8-year-old do? No one would listen to her. She was invisible, just another shadow on the streets. Mrs. Chen was arranging fresh pastries in the window when Emma arrived. "Little bug, come in, you're soaked." Inside the warm store, Mrs. Chen fussed over Emma, giving her a hot chocolate and a fresh muffin. "You look worried," the old woman said, studying Emma's face. "What's wrong?" Emma hesitated. Mrs. Chen had always been kind to her, but adults rarely believed children about serious things. "Still, I saw something bad last night, someone trying to hurt someone else." Mrs. Chen's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" Before Emma could answer, the TV mounted in the corner caught her attention. A news anchor was talking about some big company, Mackenzie Corporation, but it was the photo beside the anchor that made Emma gasp. It was the woman from last night. Sarah Mackenzie, daughter of CEO James Mackenzie, has not commented on the allegations of financial misconduct, the anchor was saying. Sources suggest the timing of these revelations, just days before the announced merger with Coleman Industries, is no coincidence. "You know her?" Mrs. Chen asked, noticing Emma's reaction. I saw her last night. Someone cut her brakes. But I warned her in time." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "Emma, you need to tell the police." "No." Emma jumped up, nearly knocking over her hot chocolate. "I can't. They'll put me in the system. I can't go back there." Mrs. Chen caught Emma's trembling hands in her own wrinkled ones. "Little bug, listen to me. Sometimes doing the right thing is scary. But if someone is trying to hurt this woman, you might be the only one who can help." Emma pulled away, shaking her head. "I'm just a kid. A homeless kid. Nobody cares what—" "I have to say, I care," said a voice from the doorway. Emma spun around to find Sarah Mackenzie standing there, elegant even in simple jeans and a sweater. Their eyes met, and Emma saw recognition flash across the woman's face. "It was you," Sarah said softly. "You saved my life last night." Emma backed away, looking frantically for an escape route. But Sarah held up her hands in a peaceful gesture. "Please don't run. I've been looking for you all morning. I showed your picture from the security cameras to shops in the area, hoping someone would recognize you." "I didn't do anything wrong," Emma said defensively. "No, you did everything." "Right." Sarah took a step closer. "And now I need your help again. Someone is trying to destroy my family's company. I think the same person who tampered with my car is behind it. You're the only witness." I can't." "Emma," Mrs. Chen said gently. "Maybe this is why you were there last night. Maybe this is your chance to make a difference." Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, her eyes kind but intense. "I promise no one will send you anywhere you don't want to go. But please, help me find out who did this. Help me protect my family." Emma's hand crept up to touch her mother's locket. She thought about all the times her mom had told her to be brave, to stand up for what was right. Finally, she took a deep breath and nodded. "I saw his face," she said. "Just for a second, but I saw him. He was old with grey hair, expensive clothes, and—" She closed her eyes, remembering. "He had a gold watch, really fancy with little diamonds around the edge." Sarah's face went pale. "Victor," she whispered. "Oh God." Mrs. Chen looked between them, concerned. "You know who it is?" "Yes." Sarah's voice was tight with anger and pain. "My father's oldest friend, the man who's been like an uncle to me my entire life." She looked at Emma with fierce determination. "Will you tell the police what you saw? I'll be with you the whole time, I promise." Emma thought about her mother again, about right and wrong, about the chance to help someone the way she wished someone had helped them when they needed it most. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll help you." What Emma couldn't know, was that her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone involved in ways none of them could have predicted. The police station was bustling with activity when Sarah and Emma arrived. Emma clutched Sarah's hand tightly, her small fingers cold with fear. Detective Lisa Morgan met them in a small interview room decorated with children's drawings, an attempt to make it less intimidating for young witnesses. "Hi, Emma," Detective Morgan said warmly, sitting across from them. "Can you tell me what you saw that night?" Emma looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. In a quiet voice, she described everything: the man's suspicious behavior, the leaking brake fluid, the expensive watch that had caught the light. "And you're sure you could identify this man?" Detective Morgan asked gently. Before Emma could answer, a commotion erupted outside the interview room. James Mackenzie burst in, his face thunderous. "Sarah, what are you doing here? And who is this child?" "Dad, she's a witness. She saw Victor." "Enough," James cut her off. "Victor Hayes has been my friend and advisor for 30 years. These ridiculous accusations." "He tried to kill your daughter," Emma's voice rang out, surprising everyone. "I saw him cut her brakes." James turned to Emma, his expression cold. "And who exactly are you?" "Some street urchin my daughter picked up." "How much is she paying you to tell these lies?" "Dad!" Sarah stood up, putting herself between her father and Emma. "She saved my life. She has no reason to lie. She has every reason to lie." "Money, attention, a chance to be part of some drama." "Mr. Mackenzie," Detective Morgan interrupted firmly, "your daughter's brake lines were definitely tampered with. This child's testimony is worthless," James snapped. "I won't have my family's reputation destroyed by some homeless girl's fairy tales. Sarah, this ends now. Come with me." "No." Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm staying with Emma." James's face darkened. "If you continue with this nonsense, you can forget about your inheritance, all of it." "Fine," Sarah didn't hesitate. "Keep your money, I choose the truth." James stormed out, leaving a heavy silence behind. Emma looked up at Sarah with wide eyes. You gave up everything. For me?" Sarah knelt beside Emma's chair. "No, sweetie, for us, for what's right." She turned to Detective Morgan. "What do we do now?" "Now," the detective said, "we build our case. But you should both be careful. If Victor Hayes really is behind this..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew how dangerous a cornered man could be, especially one with money and influence. Later that evening, Sarah took Emma to her apartment, a modest one-bedroom above her art gallery, not the luxury penthouse her father had expected her to occupy. "You can stay here," she told Emma, "at least until we figure things out." Emma stood in the middle of the living room, clutching her worn backpack. Original artwork covered the walls, and a small, upright piano sat in one corner. It was the nicest place she'd been since her mother died. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Sarah sat on the couch, patting the spot next to her. When Emma perched there cautiously, Sarah said, "Because you helped me when you had no reason to. Because you're brave and honest, and remind me of who I used to be before I let my father's world change me." Emma fingered her mother's locket. "I'm scared," she admitted. "That man, Victor, he seemed powerful." "He is," Sarah acknowledged, "but so are we when we stand together." She studied Emma's face. "Would you like some hot chocolate? I make it with real melted chocolate, the way my mum taught me." For the first time that day, Emma smiled. "Yes, please." In the kitchen, while Sarah stirred the chocolate, Emma wandered around looking at the artwork. She stopped in front of a painting of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "That's my mom," Sarah said, bringing 2 steaming mugs to the coffee table. "She died when I was 16. "Mine too," Emma whispered. 2 years ago. Cancer." Sarah's breath caught. "Mine too." She sat down heavily on the couch. "What was your mum like?" "She was a mechanic. The best one in her shop. She could fix anything." Emma's voice grew stronger as she remembered. "She taught me all about cars. Said knowledge was something nobody could take away from you." "Smart." Woman. Sarah handed Emma a mug. My mom was an artist. She taught me that beauty can heal broken things, in art and in life. She gestured to the gallery below. That's why I started this place. To help other artists, to share that healing with others. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their chocolate. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time in months, Emma felt safe. She didn't know that at that very moment, Victor Hayes was making a phone call that would shatter their newfound peace. In his penthouse office, Victor Hayes paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. It's complicated now, he said tersely. There's a witness, a child. Andrew Coleman's voice crackled through the speaker. A child? That's what you're worried about. She saw me, Andrew, and now Sarah's protecting her. Then deal with it. Andrew's voice rose. We're too close to let this fall apart now. Once I marry Sarah, we'll have controlling interest in both companies. The merger goes through, the irregularities disappear, and everyone gets rich. Simple. Victor stopped pacing. Sarah won't marry you if she discovers the truth. She doesn't have a choice, Andrew said coldly. Not if she wants to protect that little street rat she's taken in. Victor felt a rare twinge of conscience. She's just a child, Andrew. And Sarah's just a means to an end. Get rid of the witness, get Sarah back in line, and stick to the plan. The line went dead. Victor walked to his window, looking out over the city he'd helped build through decades of carefully orchestrated deals and strategic alliances. He'd watched Sarah grow up, had been there for her first steps, her first day of school, her mother's funeral. The guilt gnawed at him, but there was too much at stake now. The financial irregularities he'd carefully hidden for years were threatening to surface. If the merger didn't go through, everything would unravel. He picked up his phone again and dialed a different number. Meanwhile, at the gallery, Sarah was showing Emma around the space before opening hours. The girl's eyes were wide as she took in the colorful paintings and sculptures. This is my favorite, Sarah said, stopping in front of a large canvas filled with swirling colors. The artist was a homeless woman who used to sit outside the gallery. I gave her art supplies and she created this. Now her work sells for thousands. Emma touched the canvas reverently. It looks like feelings, all mixed together. Exactly, Sarah smiled. Art isn't just about making pretty pictures. It's about expressing what's inside us, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the painful. A knock at the gallery door interrupted them. Sarah tensed, but it was only Detective Morgan. Any progress? Sarah asked as she let her in. The detective's face was grim. We found evidence of massive financial fraud at Mackenzie Corp. Years of doctored books, hidden accounts, millions siphoned off. And it all leads back to Victor Hayes. But my father appears to be innocent. The evidence suggests Hayes was working behind his back, using his position of trust to orchestrate a complex scheme. Morgan hesitated. But there's more. We think the Coleman merger is part of it. A way to cover up the fraud by merging the books with a clean company. Sarah sank into a chair. Andrew, is he involved? We're looking into it, but Sarah, you need to be careful. Hayes has powerful friends, and we've heard rumors. What rumors? Morgan glanced at Emma, who had drifted away to look at more artwork. There's word that someone's been asking questions about the witness, describing a young girl matching Emma's description. Sarah's blood ran cold. He wouldn't. He's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. Morgan handed Sarah a card. This is my personal number. Call any time, day or night. After the detective left, Sarah found Emma sitting cross-legged in front of a sculpture, a tangle of metal pieces welded together into a complex form. What do you see? Sarah asked, sitting beside her. It's like pieces of broken things, made into something new. Emma looked up at Sarah. Like us? Sarah's heart squeezed. Yes, exactly like us. She took Emma's hand. Listen, we need to talk about something serious. The bad men, they might be looking for you. Fear flickered in Emma's eyes, but she lifted her chin bravely. Because I saw what he did? Yes. I want you to stay close to me, okay? Don't go anywhere alone, not even to the bathroom. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell me immediately. Emma nodded solemnly, then in a small voice, Sarah, are you scared too? Sarah pulled the girl into a tight hug. Yes, sweetheart. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when we are scared. Neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street, or the man inside watching the gallery with cold, calculating eyes. He spoke quietly into a phone. I have eyes on them, yes, both of them, waiting for your order. The pieces were in motion. The only question was, who would make the next move? The next morning, Sarah woke to the smell of burning toast. She found Emma in the kitchen, standing on a chair to reach the toaster, trying to scrape black crumbs into the sink. I wanted to make you breakfast, Emma said, her face falling, like Mom used to make for me, but I messed it up. Sarah's heart melted. Hey, my first attempt at cooking ended with the fire department being called. How about we make breakfast together? Soon they were working side by side, Emma carefully cracking eggs while Sarah showed her how to measure pancake ingredients. It felt wonderfully normal, as if they'd been doing this forever instead of just a few days. The peaceful moment was shattered by Sarah's phone ringing. It was her father. Sarah, James's voice was strained. We need to talk. Come to the house. Alone. Dad, I can't just leave Emma. This isn't a request. If you want to protect that child, you'll come. Now. And tell no one. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, her hands shaking. Was that your dad? Emma asked, picking up on her tension. Yes. Sarah forced a smile. Listen, sweetie. I need to run a quick errand. Marion from the gallery will stay with you until I get back. Emma's face clouded. You promised we'd stay together. I know, and I'm sorry. But Marion's trustworthy. She's worked for me for years, and I'll be back before you know it. After calling Marion and giving her strict instructions not to let Emma out of her sight, Sarah headed to her father's mansion. The drive felt longer than usual, each mile increasing her sense of dread. The housekeeper let her in silently. Sarah found her father in his study, looking older than she'd ever seen him. Victor came to see me last night, James said without preamble. Told me everything. Sarah's heart raced. Everything. The fraud, the merger, all of it. James poured himself a drink with trembling hands. 30 years of friendship, and he's been stealing from me, manipulating me, using my own daughter against me. Dad, he says he can bury it all, make the evidence disappear, but there are conditions. Sarah's blood ran cold. What conditions? The merger goes through as planned. You marry Andrew, and James couldn't meet her eyes. The witness problem goes away. Her name is Emma, Sarah said through clenched teeth. She's 8 years old and she saved my life, the life you don't seem to care about. Of course I care. James slammed his glass down. Why do you think I'm telling you this? Victor's desperate. He'll do anything to protect himself. So you're warning me. I'm offering you a choice. The merger happens, everyone wins, the company survives, jobs are saved, reputations remain intact. Or what? He'll kill a child. Kill me? James finally looked at her. Victor has evidence implicating me in the fraud. Forged documents, fake emails, enough to convince any jury. I'll go to prison, the company will collapse, thousands will lose their jobs. Is that what you want? Sarah felt the weight of impossible choices crushing her. And Emma, what happens to her? Victor has his connections, places where children disappear, but if you cooperate, she goes to a good home, a fresh start. You mean if I agree to marry a man I don't love and let Victor get away with everything? He's done? Sarah's voice cracked. How can you even suggest this? Because I'm trying to protect you, both of you. James ran a hand through his silver hair. Sarah, please, work with me on this. For once in your life, do what needs to be done. Sarah stood, her decision made. You're right, Dad. I will do what needs to be done. She walked out without another word, her mind racing. She had to get back to Emma, had to figure out a way to protect her, to expose Victor without destroying her father and everyone who depended on Mackenzie Corp. But as she pulled into the gallery's parking lot, she knew immediately something was wrong. Marion's car was there, but the gallery doors were open when they should have been locked. Sarah ran inside, her heart pounding. Emma? Marion? The gallery was empty, paintings hanging silently on pristine walls. But on the floor near the entrance lay Marion's phone, its screen cracked, and next to it, glinting in the morning light, was Emma's silver locket. Emma woke up slowly, her head fuzzy. She was in a small room with no windows, lying on an old couch. As her vision cleared, she saw Marion sitting in a chair nearby, her face pale but determined. "It's okay," Marion said softly. "I won't let them hurt you." Emma's last memories came rushing back. A man entering the gallery, Marion trying to stop him, a sweet-smelling cloth pressed over her face. "Where are we?" "I don't know exactly. Some kind of storage room." Marion's voice dropped to a whisper. "But I recognize the man who took us. He works for Mr. Hayes." Emma's hand flew to her throat, finding her mother's locket missing. Tears welled in her eyes, but she fought them back. Her mom had always said crying didn't solve problems, thinking did. "Sarah will find us," Emma said with more confidence than she felt. Marion smiled sadly. "I hope so, sweetheart." Meanwhile, Sarah was frantic. She'd called Detective Morgan immediately, but police procedures felt agonizingly slow. They were tracking Marion's phone, interviewing witnesses, following protocols while precious minutes ticked by. Her own phone rang, a blocked number. She answered instantly. "Hello, Sarah," Victor's smooth voice filled her ear. "I trust you've noticed some missing items? If you hurt them, that depends entirely on you. Come to the old Mackenzie warehouse on River Street, alone. You have 1 hour. Let me talk to Emma." A pause, then Emma's voice. "Sarah, I'm okay. Marion's with me." "Emma, honey, I'm coming for you. Just stay brave for me, okay?" "Time's ticking," Victor cut in. 1 hour, Sarah. Don't make me take care of this another way." The line went dead. Sarah's hands shook as she picked up Emma's locket from the gallery floor. Inside was a faded photo of a woman with Emma's eyes and smile, wearing mechanic's coveralls. Sarah knew she should wait for the police, should follow procedure, let the professionals handle it. But she also knew Victor, his patterns, his impatience, his ruthless efficiency. He wouldn't wait. She tucked the locket into her pocket and headed for her car, but as she reached for the door handle, a voice stopped her. "Going somewhere?" Sarah spun around to find Andrew Coleman leaning against a nearby pillar. "Not now, Andrew." "Victor told me what happened." He straightened, adjusting his perfect suit. "Let me help." "Help? You're part of this." "No, I'm not." Andrew's smooth facade cracked slightly. "I knew about the merger plan, yes, but kidnapping, attempted murder, that's not what I signed up for." Sarah studied him carefully. "Why should I believe you?" "Because Victor's gone too far." "And?" Andrew hesitated. "Because I've seen the way you look at that little girl, the way my mother used to look at me, before my father's ambition destroyed our family." Something in his voice rang true. Sarah made a quick decision. "Fine, come with me. But if this is a trick..." "It's not." Andrew pulled out his phone. "Victor's been having the warehouse watched, but I know another way in." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morgan. "Located Marion's phone signal. Team en route to River Street warehouse. Do not engage." Sarah ignored it, sliding into the driver's seat. Andrew got in beside her. "Victor will be expecting you to come through the main entrance," he said as they drove. "But there's a service door on the east side. The code should still be 5891. "Should be?" "My father owned the building before selling it to Mackenzie Corp. I used to play there as a kid." Andrew's face darkened. "Not all of us had happy childhoods, Sarah." They parked a block away. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking shadow against the afternoon sky. Sarah touched Emma's locket in her pocket, drawing strength from it. "Ready?" Andrew asked. Sarah nodded. Just, if something goes wrong, get them out. Emma and Marion. Promise me. I promise. Andrew touched her arm. Sarah, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about everything. They moved silently toward the warehouse, keeping to the shadows. The service door was partially hidden behind old crates. Andrew punched in the code. The lock clicked open. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, praying she wasn't making a terrible mistake. She didn't notice the figure watching from a nearby rooftop or the phone call being made that would change everything. The pieces were moving faster now, racing toward a confrontation that would either save them all or destroy everything Sarah held dear. And somewhere in the warehouse, a little girl held onto her courage, waiting for salvation, not knowing she would soon have a chance to be the hero once again. The warehouse was a maze of shadows and steel beams. Sarah and Andrew moved silently through the dimly lit space, guided by thin shafts of light filtering through high windows. Every footstep echoed. Every breath seemed too loud. The office area is upstairs, Andrew whispered. That's where he'll likely keep them. A sound made them freeze, voices drifting down from above. Sarah strained to listen. Getting nervous, Victor. James Mackenzie's voice was unmistakable. Sarah's heart stopped. Her father was here. Everything's under control, Victor replied smoothly. Once Sarah arrives... You said no one would get hurt, James's voice rose. This wasn't part of the plan. Plans change. You taught me that, old friend. Sarah felt Andrew touch her arm, pointing to a metal staircase. They crept closer, staying in the shadows. Meanwhile, in the small storage room, Emma was working on a plan of her own, while Marion kept watch at the door. Emma had been studying their prison. Her mother had always said to look for what others missed. The room's single light bulb cast weak shadows on the walls. But in one corner, partially hidden behind an old filing cabinet, Emma spotted something interesting. A ventilation grate. Marion, she whispered, help me move this. Together, they carefully shifted the cabinet. The grate was old, its screws loose from years of neglect. Emma's small fingers worked at them, remembering how her mother had taught her to fix things. Back on the main floor, Sarah and Andrew had reached the bottom of the stairs. They could see two men standing guard at the top. We'll never get past them, Sarah breathed. We don't have to. Andrew pointed to a service ladder on the far wall. That leads to the catwalks above. I used to sneak up there when I was a kid. They worked their way around the perimeter of the warehouse, staying hidden behind old machinery and stacked crates. Sarah's heart pounded with every step, knowing Emma was somewhere above them, scared and alone. The service ladder was rusty but solid. Sarah went first, trying not to think about the height as she climbed. Andrew followed close behind. The catwalk gave them a clear view of the office area. Through dusty windows, Sarah could see her father pacing while Victor sat calmly at a desk. Two more guards stood outside a closed door, presumably where Emma and Marion were being held. Sarah should be here any minute, Victor was saying. Once she signs the merger documents... And what then? James demanded. What happens to the girl? As I said, she'll be taken care of, like you took care of Elizabeth. Sarah's breath caught. Elizabeth, her mother's name. Victor's calm facade cracked slightly. That was an accident. Was it? James's voice was bitter. Or was she getting too close to the truth even then? All those questions about the company finances. Sarah's world tilted on its axis. Her mother's death, the cancer that had seemed to come from nowhere, progressed so rapidly. Had it been something else entirely? A soft scraping sound drew her attention. One of the ventilation grates in the ceiling was moving. As Sarah watched in disbelief, Emma's small face appeared in the opening. The girl worked her way carefully out onto a pipe running along the ceiling, her movements surprisingly confident. Sarah remembered her saying her mother was a mechanic, had taught her about machines, about being brave. Emma didn't see them on the catwalk, her attention focused on the office below. She was directly above Victor's desk now, clinging to the pipe with determined concentration. We have to do something, Andrew whispered. If she falls... But before they could move, everything happened at once. The door to the storage room burst open, Marion appearing with an old chair raised like a weapon. The guards turned, momentarily distracted. Victor stood, reaching for something in his desk drawer, and Emma, seeing her chance, let go of the pipe. She landed directly on Victor's desk, scattering papers and sending his chair crashing backward. The gun he'd been reaching for skittered across the floor. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, already running along the catwalk toward the office stairs. Victor recovered quickly, lunging for the girl, but Emma was faster, diving under the desk and emerging on the other side. "Stay back," Victor snarled, looking around frantically for his weapon. "Why?" Emma's voice rang out clear and strong. "So you can hurt more people? Like you hurt Sarah's mom?" Victor's face contorted. "You know nothing about that." "I know what evil looks like," Emma said. "My mom taught me that too." James Mackenzie stood frozen, staring at the small girl who dared to confront what he never had. And Sarah, finally reaching the office doorway, saw something that made her blood run cold. Victor had found his gun. Time seemed to slow down. Sarah saw Victor raising the gun, saw Emma's brave face, saw her father finally breaking free of his paralysis. "No!" James launched himself at Victor just as Sarah reached for Emma. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. James staggered, clutching his shoulder. Victor stumbled backward, his face a mask of shock. Sarah grabbed Emma, shielding her with her body. Andrew appeared in the doorway, Marion right behind him. "It's over, Victor," Andrew said firmly. "The police are already on their way." Victor's laugh was hollow. "You think I didn't plan for this? In 10 minutes, a computer virus will erase every trace of the fraud. No evidence, no case." "Except for us," Emma's voice came from behind Sarah. "We're evidence. We saw what you did." "And who would believe you?" Victor sneered. "A homeless child? A rebellious daughter? Against my reputation?" "I would." James's voice was strained but clear. "I've spent 30 years believing in you, trusting you, but you tried to kill my daughter. You may have killed my wife. No more." Victor's face hardened. "Then you'll go. Down with me. I made sure the evidence implicates you too." "No, he won't." Andrew stepped forward. "Because I've been gathering my own evidence. Ever since you approached me about the merger, every conversation, every document, every secret meeting, I recorded it all." Victor's gun hand trembled. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Andrew pulled out his phone. "Should we play back the part where you admitted arranging Elizabeth Mackenzie's death? Or your plans for Emma?" Sarah felt Emma's small hand slip into hers, squeezing tight. "Shatta." The distant sirens were growing louder. "It's your choice, Victor," Sarah said quietly. "But whatever you do next, you've already lost. The truth is out." Victor looked around wildly, at James bleeding on the floor, at Andrew with his damning evidence, at Sarah protecting Emma, at Marion blocking the doorway. The gun wavered, then slowly lowered. "You're right about one thing," Victor said, his voice eerily calm. "I have lost." Before anyone could move, he turned the gun on himself. Sarah spun Emma away, shielding her eyes, but no shot came. Click, click, click. The gun was empty. Victor stared at it in disbelief as police officers swarmed into the room, Detective Morgan in the lead. "Victor Hayes, you're under arrest," she announced, handcuffs already out. As the officers led Victor away, Sarah knelt in front of Emma. "Are you okay? That was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck. "I had to help. You helped me, so I helped you. That's what family does, right?" Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Right." James was being tended to by paramedics, the shoulder wound painful but not life-threatening. He caught Sarah's eye. "Daughter," he said softly, "I'm so sorry. For everything." Sarah helped Emma stand. "We have a lot to talk about, Dad. But first," she pulled Emma's locket from her pocket. "I believe this belongs to you, sweetheart." Emma's face lit up as Sarah fastened the locket around her neck. The photo inside seemed to smile up at them. Another brave mother who had taught her daughter well. "What happens now?" Emma asked, touching the locket reverently. Sarah looked at Detective Morgan, who was reviewing the evidence on Andrew's phone, at her father, who was watching them with regretful eyes, at Andrew, who had chosen truth over ambition, at Marion, who had fought to protect a child she barely knew. Now, Sarah said, we build something new together. But their story wasn't quite over. In fact, the most beautiful part was just beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police statements, legal meetings and newspaper headlines. Victor Hayes had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk. The evidence Andrew had collected proved devastating, not just about the financial fraud, but about Elizabeth Mackenzie's death. He had been slowly poisoning her, Detective Morgan explained gently to Sarah. Small doses in her daily tea, making it look like natural cancer progression. She was getting too close to discovering his embezzlement scheme. Sarah sat in her gallery office, trying to process this information. Emma was downstairs with Marion, helping to hang a new exhibition. The girls' laughter occasionally drifted up, a reminder of life and hope in the midst of painful revelations. Did my father know? Sarah asked quietly. No. The investigation shows he was completely in the dark. Victor manipulated everyone masterfully for years. Morgan hesitated. Your father wants to see you, by the way. He's being released from the hospital today. Sarah nodded absently. She hadn't spoken to James since the warehouse. Part of her wanted to maintain that distance, but another part remembered his final actions, stepping in front of Victor's gun, choosing family over fortune at last. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, holding a familiar paper bag. Thought you girls might need some fresh cookies, the old woman smiled. She had become a regular visitor, bringing treats and grandmotherly wisdom. Mrs. Chen, Emma's voice sang out as she ran up the stairs. Look what I made. She held up a painting, surprisingly good for an 8-year-old. It showed two figures, clearly Sarah and Emma, surrounded by swirling colors like the artwork they'd admired. Together that first day. It's beautiful, little bug, Mrs. Chen praised. You have a gift. Sarah's teaching me, Emma beamed, and I'm teaching her about cars. Did you know she didn't even know how to check her oil? Sarah laughed, ruffling Emma's hair. Well, we all have different skills to share. The gallery had become their sanctuary these past weeks. Emma spent her days helping Marion, learning about art from Sarah, and attending special tutoring sessions to catch up on the schooling she'd missed. At night, they returned to Sarah's apartment, now brightened with Emma's drawings and childhood touches, but there were still challenges ahead. Child services had been involved, of course. Sarah had immediately applied for emergency foster care status, but the process was complex. Miss Mackenzie? Marion appeared in the doorway. Your father is here. Sarah's heart jumped. She looked at Emma, who squeezed her hand encouragingly. It's okay, the girl whispered. Family should forgive each other. My mom always said that. James Mackenzie stood in the gallery's main, a room, his arm still in a sling. He looked smaller somehow, more human as he studied the artwork on the walls. This is beautiful, he said, as Sarah approached, gesturing to Emma's painting of swirling colors. Reminds me of your mother's work. Dad, Sarah began, but James held up his good hand. Please let me speak first. He took a deep breath. I've been blind, Sarah, blind to what really matters. Your mother knew, she always knew. She tried to tell me that love and art and family were worth more than all the business deals in the world. I didn't listen then, but I'm listening now. He turned to Emma, who stood half hidden behind Sarah. Young lady, I owe you an apology. You showed more courage and wisdom than this old fool ever did. Emma studied him carefully. Do you love Sarah? Yes, James answered without hesitation. More than anything. Then why did you try to make her marry someone she didn't love? James flinched at the direct question. Because I thought I knew what was best, I was wrong. Sarah felt tears threatening. Dad. I've made changes, James continued. I'm stepping down as CEO. The company will be restructured with a focus on ethical business practices and community investment. And he pulled an envelope from his jacket. These are for you. Inside were legal documents. James had used his considerable resources to expedite Sarah's foster care application. More than that, he had set up a trust fund for Emma's education and future needs. You don't have to do this, Sarah said softly. Yes, I do. For both of you. James's voice wavered. Your mother would have loved her, you know. Emma reminds me so much of Elizabeth. That same spark, that determination to do what's right. Emma stepped forward then, taking James's good hand in her small one. Would you like to see my other paintings? Sarah's helping me put together? An exhibition. A real one with my name on the wall and everything. James smiled. A real smile, one Sarah hadn't seen since her mother died. I would love that. As Emma led James through the gallery, chattering about colors and techniques, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The anger and hurt she'd carried for so long began to soften, making room for something new. Mrs. Chen appeared at her side, offering a cookie. See? Sometimes broken things come back together even stronger. Sarah watched her father laugh at something Emma said, saw the way his eyes crinkled just like they used to when Sarah was small. Yes, she said softly. Sometimes they do. The day of Emma's exhibition arrived with golden autumn sunshine streaming through the gallery windows. Sarah had closed the space to the public, making it a private event for this special occasion. The walls were lined with Emma's artwork, each piece telling part of their story through a child's unique perspective. Andrew arrived early, carrying a large package. He had surprised everyone by enrolling in art therapy classes, working through his own family trauma through creativity. The package contained his first completed work, a portrait of his mother that would hang alongside Emma's pieces. It's not very good, he said self-consciously as Sarah helped him hang it. It's honest, she replied. That's what matters in art. Detective Morgan came next, officially off duty, but still carrying her badge. Victor's trial was approaching, and she had worked tirelessly to build an airtight case. The detective had become a friend, often joining them for dinner and helping Emma with her homework. Mrs. Chen arrived with enough food to feed an army, insisting on arranging everything herself in the gallery's small kitchen. Marion fluttered around, adjusting lights and making sure each artwork had its proper label. Emma was upstairs in Sarah's office getting ready. She had picked out her outfit carefully, a blue dress that matched her mother's coveralls in the locket photo and shiny new shoes that Sarah had bought for the occasion. Almost ready? Sarah asked, knocking softly. Emma was standing in front of the mirror, touching her locket. Do you think she'd be proud, my mom? Sarah knelt beside her. I know she would be. Just like I am. Sarah? Emma's voice was hesitant. The social worker said, she said everything was approved, that I can stay with you for real now. Yes, sweetheart, if that's what you want. Emma turned, her eyes bright. I want to stay with you forever, but she bit her lip. Can we still visit my old neighborhood sometimes, Mrs. Chen and the other people who helped me? Of course we can. They're part of your story, part of who you are. Sarah brushed Emma's hair back gently. And speaking of stories, I have something for you. She handed Emma a small gift box. Inside was a silver charm bracelet with 2 charms, a tiny paint palette and a wrench. For both your moms, Sarah explained softly. The one who gave you life and the one who, her voice caught. The one who gave me a new life, Emma finished, throwing her arms around Sarah's neck. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. A knock at the door interrupted them. James stood there looking dapper in a new suit. The guests are arriving, he said, and Emma, someone here would like to meet you. They went downstairs to find the gallery filling with people, but it wasn't just art collectors and critics. The room was full of familiar faces from Emma's old neighborhood. The baker who used to give her day-old bread, the librarian who let her read books for hours, even the kind nurse from the free clinic who had treated her cold last winter. Mrs. Chen had organized it all, ensuring that everyone who had shown kindness to a lonely little girl could see who she had become. Emma's artwork told their story in vivid colors and bold strokes. The dark nights on the streets transformed into starry skies. The fear and loneliness turned into scenes of hope and family. The centerpiece was her largest work yet, a portrait of two mothers, one in mechanic's coveralls and one in gallery owner elegance. Their images merged in swirling colors that suggested both were part of the same heart. As Sarah watched Emma proudly showing guests her work, she felt a deep sense of rightness settle over her. This was what her mother had tried to teach her, that art wasn't just about pretty pictures on walls, but about healing hearts and connecting souls. James joined her, his arm out of the sling but still moving carefully. "Elizabeth would have loved this," he said softly. "All of it." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "She would have." Emma ran up to them then, her charm bracelet jingling. "Come on, Mrs. Chen made her special dumplings, and you haven't seen my newest painting yet." As they followed her through the crowd, Sarah caught glimpses of their story reflected in the artwork around them, the dark and the light, the pain and the joy. The endings and beginnings all woven together into something beautiful. They had all been broken in different ways. A grieving father, a lonely daughter, a homeless child, a community of people doing their best to be kind in a harsh world. But together, they had created something new and precious. Like the best art, their story would continue to touch hearts and inspire hope. And in the gallery that evening, surrounded by love and creativity, and the simple miracle of family found, they were exactly where they were meant to be. Winter arrived with soft snowflakes and twinkling holiday lights. The gallery had been transformed. For the season, wreaths and garlands adding warmth to the stark white walls. But the biggest transformation was happening in Sarah's apartment upstairs, where Emma was experiencing her first real Christmas in years. "I've never had a tree before," Emma exclaimed, helping Sarah untangle a string of lights. "Well, except the little paper ones we made at the shelter sometimes." Sarah watched the girl's face glow with excitement, remembering her own childhood Christmases. Her mother had always made them magical, filling the house with music and the smell of baking cookies. After Elizabeth died, the holidays had become cold formal affairs centered around business parties and corporate gifts. "We'll make this one extra special," Sarah promised, starting with... She pulled out a box of ornament-making supplies. "These, my mom and I used to make new ornaments every year." They spent the afternoon crafting, glitter getting everywhere as they created sparkly stars and painted pine cones. Emma was particularly proud of the tiny easel she made from popsicle sticks, complete with a miniature canvas. James arrived later, bringing takeout dinner and more decorations. He had thrown himself into grandfatherly duties with surprising enthusiasm, showing up regularly with books, art supplies, and increasingly elaborate ways to spoil his newfound granddaughter. "Look what I made, Grandpa." Emma held up the easel ornament. James examined it seriously. "Outstanding craftsmanship. It needs a prime spot on the tree." As they ate dinner together, Sarah marveled at how natural it felt, this little family they had pieced together from broken parts. Even the gallery downstairs had evolved, now offering art therapy classes for children and workshops for struggling young artists. "Oh, I almost forgot," James said, pulling an envelope from his coat. "The contractor called. The renovations are finished." Sarah's heart skipped. They had been working for months to convert the gallery's unused third floor into a proper living space. 3 bedrooms, a big kitchen, room for Emma to have her own art studio. "Can we see it?" Emma bounced in her chair. "Please?" They climbed the back stairs to the 3rd floor. The transformation was stunning, large. Windows let in the city lights, and warm wooden floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Emma ran from room to room, exclaiming over every detail. "This one's mine," she gasped, entering a room painted in soft blues and purples. An easel stood in one corner and built-in shelves lined one wall, perfect for books and art supplies. "Do you like it?" Sarah asked softly. Emma turned, her eyes shining. It's like a dream." Later, after Emma had fallen asleep on the new window seat, Sarah and James stood in the kitchen of their soon-to-be home. "Thank you," Sarah said, "for all of this." James shook his head. "I should be thanking you. You showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like." He paused. "Your mother would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of you too, Dad, for changing, for trying to make things right." A noise from the living room made them turn. Emma stood there in her pajamas, looking uncertain. "I had a bad dream," she said quietly. Sarah opened her arms and Emma ran into them. "Want to talk about it?" Emma buried her face in Sarah's shoulder. "I dreamed I was back on the streets, that none of this was real." "Oh, sweetheart." Sarah held her tight. "This is very real. You're home now." "Forever?" "Forever and ever." James cleared his throat, blinking suspiciously bright eyes. "How about some hot chocolate? Your grandmother had a secret recipe with extra marshmallows." Soon, they were all curled up on the window seat, watching snow fall over the city. Emma's head drooped sleepily against Sarah's shoulder, her charm bracelet twinkling in the soft light. "Sarah," she murmured, "can we hang my mom's photo in my new room next to my art wall?" "Of course we can. She'll always be part of our family. And can we help other kids? Like I used to be." Sarah shared a look with her father over Emma's head. They had been discussing ways to expand the gallery's community programs, maybe even start a foundation. "Yes," Sarah said, "we can definitely do that." Emma smiled, already drifting back to sleep. "Good, because everyone should have a family, even if they have to build it themselves." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in pristine white. Inside, in their almost finished home above the gallery that had started it all, 3 generations of healing hearts beat in perfect harmony. Spring came early that year, bringing cherry blossoms and new beginnings. The gallery was hosting a special exhibition, Building Family, featuring work by children who had participated in their outreach programs. Emma's pieces held a place of honor, her talent blossoming under Sarah's nurturing guidance. Detective Morgan visited regularly, bringing updates on Victor's case. The trial had concluded with a guilty verdict on all counts, including the murder of Elizabeth Mackenzie. It brought closure, but also stirred up old pain. "I keep thinking about Mom," Sarah confided to her father one evening as they watched Emma teaching art to a group of shelter kids in the gallery. "How much she would have loved all this." James nodded, his eyes soft. "She always said art had the power to heal. I didn't understand then. I do now." The gallery had become a sanctuary of sorts. Children from difficult backgrounds found safety and expression through art. Parents discovered new ways to connect with their kids. Even Andrew had found his calling, teaching art therapy classes and slowly rebuilding his relationship with his own family. Mrs. Chen still brought treats every week, now for a much larger group of hungry young artists. She had become everyone's honorary grandmother, dispensing wisdom and cookies in equal measure. "You know," she said to Sarah one day, "when I first met little Emma, I knew she was special. She had such a big heart, even when she had nothing else." Sarah watched Emma, showing a younger child how to mix colors. "She taught me more about love and courage than I ever knew possible." "That's what children do," Mrs. Chen smiled. "They show us what really matters." The gallery's new programs were thriving. They offered art classes for homeless youth, support, groups for struggling families, and mentorship opportunities for aspiring artists. The 3rd floor had become more than just a home. It was a gathering place for their ever-growing chosen family. One particularly beautiful afternoon, Sarah found Emma sitting on their rooftop garden, working on a new painting. It showed a complicated web of interconnected hearts, each one a different color and size. "What's this one about?" Sarah asked, sitting beside her. "It's about how families grow," Emma explained. "See, this heart is my first mom, and this one is you, and this big one is Grandpa. And here's Mrs. Chen and Detective Morgan and Marion." She pointed out each heart, explaining how they all connected. Sarah felt her own heart swell with love and pride. "And look," Emma continued, "I left space for more. Because families keep growing, right?" "Right," Sarah agreed, thinking of all the lives they had touched, all the connections they had made. Later that evening, they hosted a gallery event celebrating the success of their youth programs. The space was filled with artwork, music, and laughter. Children proudly showed off their creations to beaming parents and mentors. James gave a speech, his voice strong with conviction. When my wife Elizabeth started teaching art to neighborhood kids in our garage, people said she was wasting her time. But she knew what I failed to understand, that art isn't just about creating beauty. It's about creating connections, creating family, creating hope. He gestured to the walls around them, covered in vibrant artwork. This gallery, these programs, this community, this is her real legacy. Not the company I built, but the hearts we've touched, the lives we've changed. Emma slipped her hand into Sarah's as they listened. Her charm bracelet now held several new charms. A star for her first gallery showing, a heart for the day her adoption was finalized, a tiny house for their new home. "Sarah," she whispered, "do you think we could start a scholarship for kids like me who want to study art?" Sarah squeezed her hand. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We could name it after both our moms," Emma continued excitedly. "The Elizabeth and Grace Memorial Scholarship for kids who need a chance to show their hearts through art." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Of course, Emma would think of others, would want to create opportunities for children facing the same challenges she had overcome. That night, after the guests had gone and the gallery was quiet, Sarah found Emma in her art studio, adding final touches to her web of hearts painting. "You know what, Emma? I think this might be your best work yet." Emma looked up, her face serious. "It's not finished, though. It'll never be finished because love keeps growing. That's what you taught me." Sarah pulled her into a tight hug, marveling at the wisdom of this child who had stumbled into her life and changed everything. Outside, spring rain fell softly, washing the city clean. Inside, surrounded by art and love and the endless possibilities of tomorrow, their perfectly imperfect family continued to grow, one heart at a time. Summer arrived in a wave of golden light and new possibilities. The Elizabeth and Grace Memorial Scholarship had become a reality, with Emma insisting on being part of the selection committee. She took her responsibilities seriously, carefully reviewing each application with a wisdom beyond her years. "This one," she said one evening, showing Sarah a particularly moving submission. "She lives in her car with her mum, but she makes art with whatever she can find, leaves, bottle caps, old newspapers, just like I used to do." Sarah studied the portfolio photos. The artwork was raw but powerful, speaking of hope and resilience in the face of hardship. "She's definitely a contender." They were working late in the gallery office, surrounded by application files. James had doubled the scholarship fund, allowing them to help more young artists than originally planned. But choosing between so many deserving candidates was heart-wrenching. "I wish we could help them all," Emma sighed, her face troubled. "We're helping as many as we can," Sarah assured her, "and the scholarship is just the beginning." Indeed, their community programs had expanded beyond art classes. They now offered meals, school supplies, and even emergency housing assistance to families in need. The gallery's third floor had become a hub of activity, with support group meetings and mentoring sessions happening daily. Marion poked her head in. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you." To Sarah's surprise, Andrew stood in the doorway. He had been traveling, sharing their art therapy program model with galleries in other cities. His own healing journey had inspired him to help others find peace through creativity. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I had to show you this in person." He pulled out his tablet, opening a video. "This is from the Chicago program we started." The video showed a room full of children painting, their faces alight with concentration and joy. Among them was a familiar face, Andrew's father, helping a small boy mix colors. "Dad's been volunteering there 3 times a week," Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. "Says it's helping him understand what he missed with me." Emma watched the video intently. "They look happy, like they found their family too." Andrew smiled. "That's exactly right. And it all started because of you, Emma. Your bravery showed us all what was possible." Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Sarah found herself unable to sleep. She wandered down to the gallery, where moonlight cast gentle shadows through the windows. Her mother's portrait still held a place of honor on one wall, now accompanied by a photograph of Grace, Emma's mother, in her mechanics' coveralls. Between them hung Emma's Web of Hearts painting, which had become something of a symbol for their programs. "I wish you could see this, Mom," Sarah whispered. "See how your dream of healing through art has grown." "She can see it." James's voice came softly from behind her. He often had trouble sleeping too, haunted by memories and regrets. "Both of them can." Sarah turned to find her father holding a small box. "What's that?" "Something I've been meaning to give Emma. It was your mother's." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver paintbrush charm. "Elizabeth always said she'd give it to her granddaughter someday." "Dad." Sarah felt. Tears well up. "She'll love it. I found it while cleaning out my office at the company." James had officially retired, turning Mackenzie Corp over to a new board focused on ethical business practices and community investment. Along with these, he pulled out a stack of old photographs, Elizabeth teaching art classes in their garage, a young Sarah covered in paint, moments of joy and creativity that had been overshadowed by ambition and greed. "I forgot who we were," James said quietly. "What really mattered, but Emma, she helped me remember." Sarah hugged her father, feeling the years of pain and misunderstanding melt away. "She helped us all remember." A small sound made them turn. Emma stood in the doorway in her pajamas, her charm bracelet twinkling. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I kept thinking about all the kids who need help." Sarah held out her hand. "Come here, sweetheart, your grandfather has something for you." As James presented Emma with the paintbrush charm, explaining its history, Sarah watched their faces glow in the moonlight. Here they were, 3 generations brought together by loss and love, creating something beautiful from their broken pieces. "It's perfect," Emma declared, admiring the charm. "Now I have a piece of both grandmothers with me." She yawned and Sarah noticed the late hour. "Time for bed, young artist." But Emma lingered, looking at the photographs James had found. "Can you tell me stories about them? About when you were little and your mom taught art?" How could Sarah resist? They ended up sitting on the gallery floor, sharing stories and memories, until Emma fell asleep, with her head in Sarah's lap, the paintbrush charm clutched in her small hand. The first anniversary of Emma's art exhibition arrived on a perfect September day. The gallery buzzed with excitement as they prepared for a special celebration, not just of Emma's art, but of everything their little family had accomplished in the past year. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the refreshments, enlisting help from other neighborhood restaurants to create a feast that represented their diverse community. Detective Morgan, now a close family friend, helped hang streamers while trading playful banter with Emma. "Remember when you were too scared to talk to police?" she teased. Emma, balancing on a stepladder to hang fairy lights, grinned. "Remember when you thought I was just another street kid?" "Never," Morgan replied softly. "I knew you were special from the start." The exhibition featured artwork from all their program participants, but Emma's new series held center stage. She had spent months working on it in secret, refusing to let even Sarah see the finished pieces until today. As guests began arriving, scholarship recipients, program participants, community supporters, Sarah felt overwhelming gratitude. Their gallery family had grown so much, touching lives in ways she never imagined possible. Marion approached with an elderly woman Sarah didn't recognize. "Sarah, this is Mrs. Peterson. She was your mother's art teacher in high school." The woman's eyes were bright with tears. "Elizabeth always said art could save lives. I see she passed that belief on to you." Before Sarah could respond, a hush fell over the gallery. Emma was unveiling her new series, 6 large canvases covered in sheets. One by one, she pulled the sheets away, revealing a story told in vibrant colors and bold strokes. The first painting showed a small figure huddled in a doorway, but the darkness around her was shot through with threads of gold, representing the kindness of people like Mrs. Chen. The second depicted a car with cut brake lines, but instead of fear, it focused on the moment of warning, of one child reaching out to help another. The third showed the gallery, its windows glowing with warm light, offering sanctuary and hope. The fourth captured their growing family, Sarah, Emma, James, and all the people who had become part of their circle, their figures intertwined with swirling colors. The fifth was a view of their rooftop garden, where they now hosted art classes and community gatherings, the city skyline a backdrop to scenes of healing and connection. But it was the sixth painting that took Sarah's breath away. It showed two women, Elizabeth and Grace, standing side by side, their arms outstretched toward the viewers. Behind them, a brilliant light seemed to radiate from the canvas itself, suggesting hope, love, and infinite possibilities. "I called it Mothers of the Heart," Emma explained to the silent crowd, "because sometimes the family you build is just as important as the family you're born with." Sarah felt James take her hand, squeezing tight. Around them, people wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the profound wisdom of a child who had known both devastating loss and extraordinary love. Mrs. Chen made her way to the front, carrying something in her arms. "Emma, dear, we have something for you." It was a book, a beautiful handmade album filled with photographs, drawings, and messages from everyone whose lives had been touched by their programs. Children Emma had taught, parents who had found hope through art therapy, volunteers and supporters who had become family. Emma turned the pages carefully, her eyes wide. "It's like my Web of Hearts painting come to life." "Exactly," Mrs. Chen smiled, "because love multiplies. Every heart you touch goes on to touch others." Sarah watched her daughter, her miracle, her gift, her teacher, sharing her joy with everyone around her. Emma had taught them all so much about courage, about forgiveness, about the true meaning of family. The afternoon sun painted the gallery in warm light, making the artwork glow. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside, surrounded by love and art and the family they had built together, Sarah finally understood what her mother had always known, that the greatest masterpieces aren't painted on canvas, but in the moments of connection that change lives forever. "Mom," Emma called, waving her over, "come see what Mrs. Peterson brought. Photos of Grandma Elizabeth when she was young." Sarah joined them, slipping an arm around Emma's shoulders. Together they looked at images of a teenage Elizabeth, paint-splattered and grinning, her passion for art and life shining through the years. "She looks happy," Emma observed, "like us." "Yes," Sarah agreed, holding her daughter close, "exactly like us." As autumn painted the city in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah received an unexpected call from Detective Morgan. The trial transcripts from Victor's case had been released, and among them was a sealed letter, written by Elizabeth Mackenzie shortly before her death. "We found it in Victor's personal files," Morgan explained gently. "He must have intercepted it before it could be delivered. Would you like me to bring it over?" Sarah sat in her office, hands trembling as she held the yellowed envelope. Emma was downstairs teaching an art class to younger children, her voice drifting up through the floorboards as she explained color theory. "Do you want me to stay?" Morgan asked, but Sarah shook her head. "I need to do this alone." The letter was dated 3 days before Elizabeth's death. Sarah recognized her mother's elegant handwriting immediately. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then my suspicions were correct. Victor has been stealing from the company for years, using sophisticated methods to hide his tracks. I've gathered evidence, but more importantly, I've discovered something far worse. He's been tampering with my medication. I know this letter may never reach you. Victor's influence runs deep, and I feel my strength fading. But I need you to know something. I've seen the truth about him, about the company, about the way money and power can corrupt even the closest friendships. Don't let that happen to you, my darling girl. Don't let the pursuit of success blind you to what really matters. Your father has lost his way, but I believe love can bring him back. Art can bring him back. It's what saved me during my darkest times, and it can save him too. I've left something for you, hidden in the old mural in the garage. A record of everything I discovered, but also memories, hopes, dreams I had for you. Victor may take my life, but he can never take the love we share. Remember what I taught you. Art isn't just about creating beauty. It's about creating connection. It's about healing broken hearts and building bridges between souls. Keep teaching, keep creating, keep loving. That's your true inheritance. And Sarah, when you find someone who needs love, who needs family, don't hesitate. Open your heart. That's where real wealth lies. All my love, Mom. Sarah's tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. After all these years, her mother's last words had finally reached her. And somehow, without knowing it, Sarah had fulfilled her mother's wishes perfectly. She found James in the gallery's workshop, helping a group of veterans learn woodworking as art therapy, another program they'd recently started. "Dad," she said softly, "we need to go to the old house." The garage hadn't been opened since they moved out years ago. Everything was covered in dust, but the mural Elizabeth had painted still glowed with faded colors, a garden scene full of hidden butterflies and secret flowers. James ran his hand over the wall. She spent months on this. I never understood why it was so important to her. Sarah examined the mural carefully. There, she pointed to a section where the paint seemed slightly different. "Help me." Together, they carefully removed the panel, revealing a small alcove. Inside was a metal box containing documents, proof of Victor's crimes, but also photographs, sketches, and a small notebook filled with Elizabeth's observations about her daughter. "Sarah taught herself to mix colors today," James read, his voice breaking. "She has such a gentle soul, such an eye for beauty. I pray she never loses that." "I almost did," Sarah whispered, "but Emma brought it back." Speaking of Emma, they found her in the gallery kitchen with Mrs. Chen covered in flour as they attempted to recreate an old family cookie recipe. "Is everything okay?" Emma asked, noticing their emotional state. "You both look like you've been crying." Sarah held up the notebook. "We found some of Grandma Elizabeth's writing. Would you like to hear about when I was your age?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Yes, please. Can we make hot chocolate and read it together?" Soon they were settled. In their cozy living room above the gallery, Emma curled between Sarah and James as they took turns reading Elizabeth's words. Each entry revealed a mother's love, a teacher's wisdom, an artist's vision. "She would have loved you so much," Sarah told Emma, watching the girl trace the sketches in the notebook. "I think she did," Emma said thoughtfully. "She wrote about wanting you to find someone to love, to help. Maybe she knew I was coming." James cleared his throat. "There's something else we found. Elizabeth, your grandmother. She left plans for an art therapy center, something much bigger than just classes in a garage." Emma sat up straight. "Like what we're doing now?" "Yes," Sarah smiled through her tears. "Exactly like what we're doing now." They too stayed up late into the night, reading Elizabeth's words, sharing memories, making plans. The past and present wove together like threads in a tapestry, creating something beautiful from loss and love, and the simple miracle of family found. Outside, autumn leaves danced in the streetlights. Inside, 3 generations healed together, guided by the words of a woman who had seen the truth about love and art and the power of an open heart. The discovery of Elizabeth's notebook sparked something new in their already evolving family. Sarah found herself looking at their programs with fresh eyes, seeing how they aligned with her mother's vision. James spent hours poring over Elizabeth's plans, determined to bring them to life. But it was Emma who truly understood the significance of their discovery. One morning she presented Sarah with a new painting, a recreation of Elizabeth's garage mural, but with subtle differences. "Look closely," Emma urged. Sarah studied the painting. Within the garden scene, Emma had incorporated tiny portraits, Elizabeth teaching art, Grace fixing cars, Sarah helping children paint her, Emma herself sharing her gifts with others. A legacy of love and teaching, passed down through generations. "It's our story," Emma explained. "All of us. Even the parts that hurt, they're part of what made us who we are." The painting became the centerpiece of their next exhibition, titled Legacy of Love. This time, they invited other families to share their stories of healing through art, creating a tapestry of hope and resilience. Mrs. Chen contributed her own piece, a traditional Chinese brush painting showing a phoenix rising from ashes, surrounded by smaller birds helping it fly. Because sometimes, she said, we all need a little help to rise again. Detective Morgan surprised everyone by sharing drawings she'd made during difficult cases, explaining how art had helped her process the trauma she witnessed daily. Her vulnerability inspired other first responders to join their programs, finding healing through creativity. Andrew returned from his travels with stories and artwork from similar programs across the country. It's like ripples in a pond, he said. Each act of kindness, each moment of healing, spreads out to touch more lives. One afternoon, while helping Emma organize art supplies for her next class, Sarah found her daughter unusually quiet. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Emma carefully arranged paintbrushes before answering. "I was thinking about the day I saw that man hurting your car. I was so scared, but something told me I had to help." "That was very brave of you." "No," Emma shook her head. "It wasn't brave, it was just right. Like how you knew taking me in was right, like how Grandma Elizabeth knew teaching art was right." Sarah sat beside her daughter. "Sometimes the right thing is the hardest thing, but worth it, right?" Emma looked up with those wise eyes that seemed to hold all the knowledge of her two mothers. "Because look what happened. We found each other, and now we're helping other people find their families too." Sarah pulled Emma close, breathing in the scent of paint and cookie dough that seemed to follow her everywhere. "Yes, sweetheart. Definitely worth it." Later that evening, they hosted a special workshop for parents and children dealing with loss. Emma shared her story, showing how art had helped her process her grief and find hope again. "Sometimes," she told the group, "you think your heart is broken forever, but then you find people who help you put the pieces back together in a new way. And maybe it looks different than before, but it's still beautiful." Sarah watched from the doorway as Emma helped a small girl mix colors, showing the same patience and gentleness that Elizabeth had shown in her garage art classes so many years ago. James joined her, holding Elizabeth's notebook. "I keep finding new things in here," he said softly. "Little notes about how art brings people together, how it heals wounded spirits." She knew Sarah. She knew all along what we're just learning now. "And Emma knows it too," Sarah replied, watching her daughter move among the families, offering encouragement and understanding beyond her years. Maybe that's the real legacy, not just teaching art, but teaching love. Through the gallery windows, the city lights twinkled like stars. Inside, families worked together at easels and tables, sharing stories, sharing pain, sharing hope. The air smelled of paint and possibility. Mrs. Chen appeared with her ever-present tray of cookies, now aided by Emma's attempts at baking. "You?" "No," she said wisely. "Some people spend their whole lives searching for purpose. But you, little bug," she smiled at Emma. "You found yours by helping others find theirs." Emma grinned, paint smudged on her cheek. "That's what family does, right? Helps each other find the way home." Sarah felt her heart swell with love and pride. Yes, that was exactly what family did, whether related by blood or bound by love, whether broken or healing, whether lost or found. They had all found their way home, guided by the wisdom of a mother's last letter, the courage of a child's open heart, and the simple truth that love, like art, had the power to transform even the deepest wounds into something beautiful. The news came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Victor Hayes had died in prison. Detective Morgan delivered the information personally, knowing how it might affect them all. Sarah sat in the gallery office, processing the news while watching Emma teach her morning art class below. The girl's voice drifted up, strong and clear, as she explained how to create light and shadow. "Are you okay?" Morgan asked gently. Sarah took a deep breath. "I thought I'd feel something. Relief maybe, or anger. But honestly, I just feel sad. Sad that he never understood what really matters in life." They watched Emma move among her students, offering encouragement and guidance with a grace that still amazed Sarah. One little girl was struggling with her painting, tears of frustration in her eyes. Emma knelt beside her, speaking softly, and soon both were smiling as they worked together to fix the problem. "She's remarkable," Morgan observed. You both are. Later that evening, after classes were done and the gallery was quiet, Sarah found Emma in their rooftop garden. She was adding details to her latest painting, a series of doorways, each one opening onto a different scene of hope and healing. Detective Morgan told you about Victor? Emma asked without looking up from her work. Yes. How did you know? You had that sad but trying not to show it look. Emma put down her brush. I'm sad too, not for him exactly, but for all the love he missed out on. Sarah sat beside her daughter, marveling at her compassion. You know, when I was your age, I thought success meant having lots of money and power. My father thought the same thing. But Grandma Elizabeth knew better, Emma said. She knew love was more important. Yes, she did, and somehow you knew it too, even when you had nothing. Emma touched her mother's locket, now sharing space with Elizabeth's paintbrush charm and several others on her bracelet. I had love. Mom made sure I knew what that felt like, so I could recognize it again when I found you. James arrived with their traditional evening hot chocolate, joining them in the garden. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. I've been thinking, he said slowly, about Elizabeth's plans for the art therapy center. What if we made it bigger? What if we created something that could help families all over the country? Emma's eyes lit up. Like Andrew does, traveling to different cities. Even bigger, James smiled. We could create a foundation, provide grants for other galleries to start similar programs, help more families find each other through art. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was what her mother had dreamed of, art reaching beyond gallery walls to touch lives, heal hearts, build bridges. We could call it the Three Mothers Foundation, Emma suggested, for Grandma Elizabeth, my mom Grace, and you, Sarah, because you all taught me different kinds of love. Sarah pulled Emma close, breathing in the familiar scent of paint and promise that always surrounded her. I think that's perfect. They stayed in the garden until the stars came out, planning and dreaming. Below in the gallery, artwork from their various programs lined the walls, each piece telling a story of transformation, of family found, of love multiplied. The exhibition space was being prepared for a new show, featuring work from their expanded youth programs. Emma's students had created a collaborative piece, a massive mural showing their city not as it was, but as it could be, full of color, connection, and possibility. You know what I just realized? Emma said suddenly. When I was living on the streets, I used to dream about having a real home. But home isn't just a place, is it? It's people. It's love. It's knowing you belong somewhere. Sarah exchanged a look with her father, seeing in his eyes the same profound gratitude she felt. They had all been lost in different ways, James in his pursuit of power, Sarah in her resistance to love, Emma in her literal homelessness. But together, they had found their way back to what mattered most. Mrs. Chen's voice called up from below, "Little Bug, Sarah, James, the cookies are ready." They made their way downstairs where the smell of fresh-baked cookies filled the air. Marion was there too, helping set up for tomorrow's classes. Detective Morgan had stopped by with news about their latest community outreach program. Andrew called on video chat from another city, eager to share updates about the programs spreading across the country. Their family had grown so much, Sarah thought, not just by blood or law, but by love and choice, and the simple act of opening their hearts to each other. Emma disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a plate piled high with cookies. "Mrs. Chen's been teaching me her secret recipe," she announced proudly, "so I can pass it on someday like all the other important things we're learning to share." 1 year to the day after finding Elizabeth's letter, the Three Mothers Foundation was officially launched. The gallery had been transformed for the occasion, its walls showcasing artwork from all their programs across the country. But the centerpiece was something special, a triptych painted by Emma, Sarah, and James together. The first panel, painted by James, showed Elizabeth in her garage studio, surrounded by neighborhood children learning to create. The second, by Sarah, depicted Grace teaching Emma about cars, their love evident in every brushstroke. The third, by Emma, showed their present-day gallery family in all its beautiful complexity. "It's our past, present, and future," Emma explained to the gathered crowd, "because every ending can be a new beginning if you're brave enough to love." The Foundation's first initiative was already underway, establishing art therapy programs in children's hospitals nationwide. Emma had been particularly passionate about this project, remembering her mother's final days and how art had helped her cope with loss. "Art speaks when words can't," she told a reporter from the local news. "Sometimes you need to paint your feelings before you can understand them." Sarah watched her daughter handle the interview with poise and wisdom beyond her years. Emma had grown so much, yet retained the pure heart that had first led her to warn a stranger about cut brake lines. The celebration continued into the evening. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the refreshments, creating a feast that represented the diverse community they'd built. Detective Morgan brought her own contribution, a series of photographs documenting their journey from that first frightening night to the thriving family they'd become. Andrew arrived with exciting news. 5 more cities had signed on to implement their programs. "And that's just the beginning," he said. "People are starting to understand that art isn't just about creating beauty, it's about creating connection." James stood to make a speech, his voice strong with emotion. "When my wife Elizabeth started teaching art in our garage, I thought she was wasting her time. I was wrong. She knew something I took years to learn, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched and hearts healed." He gestured to the gallery around them, to the artwork that told countless stories of transformation. "This foundation, this family we've built, this legacy of love, this is her true masterpiece. And it will continue growing, touching more lives, creating more connections, building more families." Marion distributed small packages to each guest, journals bound in handmade paper, each containing a note from Emma. "Everyone has a story to tell. Art helps us tell it." As the evening wound down, Sarah found Emma in their rooftop garden, adding final touches to a new painting. It showed a small figure standing at a crossroads, but unlike her earlier works that focused on darkness and fear, this one radiated light and possibility. "Is this you?" Sarah asked softly. "It's everyone," Emma replied. "Everyone who needs to find their way home. See the lights in the windows? They're all different colors because every family is different, but they're all beautiful." Sarah sat beside her daughter, remembering that scared little girl in the convenience store doorway. "You know what I think? I think you were never really lost. You were just waiting to help us find our way." Emma leaned against her mother, her charm bracelet twinkling in the starlight. "Maybe we were all waiting for each other, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't know what picture they were making, until they came together." Below in the gallery, their family and friends lingered over dessert, voices and laughter drifting up through the warm evening air. Each person there had been touched by their story and would go on to touch others in turn. Mrs. Chen's voice called up, "Sarah, Emma, you're missing the surprise." They made their way downstairs to find the gallery transformed once again. The lights had been dimmed, and hundreds of small electric candles created a warm glow. In the center of the room stood an easel with a blank canvas. "We thought," James explained, "that we could create something together, all of us, to mark this new beginning." One by one, each person added their touch to the canvas, a brushstroke, a fingerprint, a small drawing. The artwork that emerged wasn't technically perfect, but it was alive with love and hope, and the simple miracle of family found. Emma added the final touch, a small golden star in the corner, shining bright against the darkness. "For all the other lost children," she said, "so they know there's always light somewhere, always love waiting to be found." Sarah hugged her daughter close, feeling the perfect rightness of this moment, this family, this life they'd built together. From a broken brake line to a foundation that would help thousands, from a lonely little girl to a wise young teacher, from strangers to family, their story had come full circle, and it wasn't ending. It was, as Emma had said, just another beautiful beginning. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside, surrounded by art and love and the family they had chosen, Sarah finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her all those years ago, that the greatest masterpieces aren't painted on canvas, but in the moments of connection that change lives forever. Emma's voice rose clear and strong in the candlelit gallery. This is just the first chapter of our next story, and it's going to be amazing. Looking at their gathered family, not just blood relations, but heart relations. Bound together by love and choice and the courage to begin again, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that her daughter was right.